during the visit at the SABC. So we cannot now hold new people accountable that do not know anything. The person who knows must come and account. Thank you.
Comrade Vincent.
Thanks, Comrade Chair. Not taking away from what members are saying, but just to set the record straight, Chair. My understanding is that the accounting authority is the board. Now, I agree that Mr. Guma is integral in answering the questions that we were preparing for, but the accounting authority is the board.
Can you pull the mic closer to you?
I'm saying the accounting authority is the board, so that we clear on who the accounting authority is for the SABC. But I do agree with members that the person that would have had a greater impact in terms of answering the questions would have been the acting GCEO, or Mr. Guma, whatever title he holds now. But just so that it's clear that the accounting authority is the board and they're here. My second point is, Chair, again, not taking away from members. This is a going concern, a going institution. Those that are sitting here today must answer for it, because when they were appointed, they knew full well what they were in for. So I think that we must continue with the interrogation. I think that we deserve an answer for why Mr. Guma is not here, and that matter must be taken up seriously by the accounting authority, because we don't take kindly to the fact that he's not here. And as members have said, he wasn't here when we were in Johannesburg at the end of March. So I thought, let's put it that way, Chair, to try and marry all these points. They must answer why he's not here, but I think the business of the day must continue, because those that are ultimately accountable for the running of the SABC are before us.
Okay. All right. As I give the minister, comrades, I remember what happened when we were at the SABC. You remember when we had to go and caucus and said, let us be strategic. We must not allow ourselves to be derailed. Just let's keep that at the back of our minds. But let me hear from the minister. Well, the deputy chairperson of the board is also here. But let me allow the minister to make a remarks, but also to talk to the issues that comrades have raised.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I would plead with the committee chairperson that we continue with the sitting, for the simple reason that the more we postpone because someone is not here, the more we postpone dealing with issues in the SABC. And the board that is the accounting authority, as Honorable Smith correctly says, is seized with a lot of work at the SABC. And postponing issues because of one person is not going to help the board to discharge its mandate. My humble plea is that we continue with the hearing today. If there are any other issues, we can tackle them differently. But I would really want us to move on these issues, because this session will also give you a lot more, a bit more information than you had in the last meeting that you had with the SABC. I arrived at the SABC on Monday to prepare for this sitting, and Mr. Aguma was not there. I was told that he's not well, he's sick. Now, if that has happened in the past and the following day he was there, I really would not want to delve into that, because I'm not a medical doctor, so I would not know what operation he had gone for. It could have been something minor.
Just a minute. Please, whoever is going to come in late, please close the door. Yes, continue.
So I would just appeal that, he says he is sick. Let's just leave it at that. That it's coincidental that the sick leave is taken when we're supposed to meet SCOPA. is a different matter altogether. But I hear the concerns of the honourable members. I had ratified the appointment of the board specifically because we need to commence with the work as prescribed by the Broadcasting Act and other supporting legislation, and also as prescribed by the ad hoc committee report. The board started its work. I have been very close to issues at the SABC. At one point, Chairperson, I had actually asked the board to find a caretaker CEO and to look for a turnaround strategist that in the interim, whilst we're looking for a CEO, the board would be able to do its work without hindrance. And unfortunately, that has not been done. And I can imagine that they really were concentrating on other things, but also at the same time trying to find a suitable candidate that would come in as a caretaker CEO, because I do concur with the view that if a team has presided over what we are here about today, that is not the right team to take you through any change that you want to introduce in an organization, especially on governance issues. So I am told by the deputy chairperson that someone has been appointed as acting CEO. So as we speak today, Mr. Agoma is not the acting CEO. I hope I have answered those.
Don't we have the name of the person?
His name is...
or her name?
It's Sidiso Ralitab. Yeah, Ralitab. He is the GE for technology. But the process to appoint almost a new executive at the SABC is underway. We've advertised, so that process should be expedited in terms of the shortlisting, so that we get 2 interviews very, very quickly. We really want to start on a new slate. I'm new. They are interim. They will leave. The interim board will leave at some point, but I will still be left with ensuring that the SABC is what is expected by our people. A public broadcaster that discharges on its mandate with the necessary support both from government and also from Parliament. On the other matters that Honorable Hlengwa speaks about, that almost everybody, they were told that almost all the people that were acting were going to stop acting the following day or something to that effect. I don't know what happened, but the issue of acting is quite an untenable one, because, and continuous periods of acting, because it creates serious governance risks. It's just a risk in itself. And we are looking at ensuring that that is a thing that is eradicated in the SABC, and we get people who will take responsibility for their decisions, people that will account for their decisions and the implementation of the APPs, and people who will understand who it is that they're accountable to and how frequently they should account. So I was just answering on those issues.
All right. I think 2 things that I would want you to talk to before you leave. And I'll also come to the Deputy Chair before I go back to comrades. There is an issue that I would like you as the political head to give your commitment and personal attention to. For or so now, pursuant to the report of the Public Protector, National Treasury has been requesting for documents from the SABC, and they have not been forthcoming because there is, from the SABC side, they say protocol requires that those documents must be sought from the Department of Communications. Letters were sent to that department, including a letter from the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Communication. Until today, those documents have not been sent. The National Treasury was supposed to submit to us their report in November last year. They couldn't. We postponed it to end of January this year. They haven't. Last week, Wednesday, when they appeared before us, we said, where is the report of the SABC, DNL, Transnet, PRASA? They are all held back because the affected entities don't want to make documents available. And I see your DG is here. I would want to get commitments and a process. Two, I think it will be good for you to use this platform to assure your workers in the SABC that they still have a job and a paying job. Those are the two things. Beyond that, I would want a Deputy Chair, just for the information of comrades here, in relation to Mr. Aguma. We know that, and why the chairperson of the board is not here. Mr. Aguma, in relation to the DC that is taking place there, because then that assists comrades to have better context of the person that we're talking about. Comrade Minister, on those two issues that I read.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Unfortunately, some of the things that had been asked of the department before I arrived have not been brought to my attention. Otherwise, I would have responded to them. The acting DG is sitting behind me. I do not have such information before me, because I then would have responded.
No, all I need is a commitment that the obfuscation of the past will not persist. Documents will be made available.
Yeah. I was going to tackle the issue as I was going to read my opening remarks, Chairperson. I'm glad that you raised it because it is seriously a problem. The problems that you will find in the SABC relate to human capital management and development. They relate to financial management. They relate to what would ultimately be seen as a contravention of the National Heritage Act with regards to archiving, and also a contravention to the minimum information security standard. So we seriously have a problem at the SABC. I've seen a copy of a skills audit from 2014, which paints a very bleak picture of skills capacity in the SABC. And where we try to bring the SABC to a situation where it can effectively discharge its mandate, as long as we do not deal with the skills issues there, we will still continue to have problems. As long as the SABC does not innovate, we will still get problems, because what that would mean is that it does not catch up with the rest of the world and the development in the industry quick enough.
Okay.
So it will always be overtaken by events if those things are not taken care of. And I must say that over the years, the SABC, and even recently, has been dogged with controversies and has often been subject to news rather than the producer of news. These events have ultimately led to the dissolution of quite a number of boards and have been replaced by interim boards, that is in 2013, and recently this year in April 2017. Chairperson and members will recall that when the fourth administration took over in 2009 from the previous administration, the SABC's governance and financial health was in tatters even then. So it's a legacy, historical legacy problem. In fact, the SABC experienced corporate governance crisis even before the year 2006, and when there was an alleged political interference in the appointment of the board and the executives at the SABC. It is important to recall that in September 2009, after being instructed by Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications, the Auditor General identified a number of issues that impacted negatively on the SABC, and such were referred to the Special Investigating Unit, which completed its report in June 2012. I'm not sure whether the committee has had sight of such a report. A number of issues came up, and there were recommendations on how to address these by the SIU. The 9.6 million fruitless and wasteful expenditure, the 428.6 million irregular expenditure, financial misconduct in terms of Section 83(3) of the PFMA, as they willfully or negligently failed to exercise a duty assigned. 9 criminal investigations and prosecutions. The SIU identified financial misconduct by 22 individual board members that served on 3 separate SABC boards. The SABC has in the past paid for security at the houses of former employees and former board members, respectively. During these crises, for instance, in 2008-2009 financial year, the SABC lost 910 million and was forced to seek external funding in order to implement its legislated mandate. In a nutshell, these issues around corporate governance failures, incurring fruitless and wasteful expenditure, the inability to comply with the Companies Act are not new issues to the SABC. These should never have recurred because we know them, but they keep recurring year after year, board after board, executive after executive. Many hearings and appearances before SCOPA later, we still sit with the same problems. Chairperson, Section 2A of the Act empowers the SABC to contribute to a democracy, development of society, gender equality, nation building, provision of education, and strengthening the moral fiber of society. The broadcasting chapter in Section 6 to 28 of the Act relates, amongst others, to the development of South African expression of providing in South Africa official languages a wide range of programming, as well as the SABC's license conditions. The SABC is further bound to meet its license conditions set for its individual radio stations and television channels as set out by the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To this end, the SABC is mandated to migrate from the analog broadcasting to digital in 2018, and this requires adequate funding. In one of the recent developments, on the 24th of November 2009, government announced the approval of government's bank guarantee for 1.473 billion, of which 1 billion was released to the SABC with tight conditions which were introduced alongside the guarantee. It is important to note that whilst the SABC subsequently paid back this amount, and I must say in record time, well before the contractual terms, the SABC only achieved 5 of the 22 government guarantee conditions. And my suspicion is that that was done so that they are not bound by these contractual obligations. And what I have said to the board is that those contractual obligations of even that amount of that guarantee are still applicable, and they should be implemented. So the fact that the money was paid, in my view, all of those issues related to governance, so they still are applicable today. And Section 14 of the Broadcasting Act provides that the board, as the accounting authority of the corporation, is supported by the 3 executive directors and the executive committee of not more than 11 group executives. In this respect, the board accounts in terms of the PFMA, the Companies Act, and other applicable National Treasury regulations. I'm raising these issues to emphasize that the interim board must understand that its scope of work is not just limited to the implementation of the ad hoc committee report and the public protector's report, but to ensure the following. The implementation of section 51(1)(b)(2) of the PFMA, which requires that the board as accounting authority must take effective and appropriate steps to prevent fruitless, wasteful, and irregular expenditure. To comply with the PFMA and must understand the implication of non-compliance as the accounting authority in terms of section 50, 51, and 55 of the PFMA. To this end, I've instructed that the interim board should not just focus on the last 3 financial years and should instead focus on all governance failures. And in terms of the office of the board, and if the term of the office of the board ends, the full board will have to carry on with this work. I want to put it on record that I have not directed the SABC interim board to investigate Minister Mutambi or any other minister, because it is neither the mandate of the board nor is it the mandate of me as minister to do that. Honorable members, one of the issues we're dealing with this morning as part of the report is as a result of the lack of supporting documents in the procurement of goods and services, including statutory documents required when tenders are processed and adjudicated. And that's the issue you were asking about. We had a lengthy meeting, a lot of which time was spent talking about the unavailability of documents. When the deputy chair speaks, he will tell you how difficult it has been to get documents from the SABC. I even had to call other managers in the SABC to that meeting because I just needed to understand why it is so difficult to get documentation. Part of the reason is appointment of people to positions that when they leave, there is no handover. Sometimes when people leave, they leave with documents. Sometimes people don't even understand the value of managing and properly archiving documentation. The SABC has weak internal controls and does not have a proper document management system to enable them to store, retrieve, and safeguard information as required by law. In this regard, I've instructed the board to urgently engage with the Department of Arts and Culture, who are the custodians of the National Archive Act, to assist in the proper management and archiving of records. But I have also further directed the SABC board to abide by the minimum information security standards and to engage the State Security Agency, who are the custodians of that policy. Upon my appointment as part of my oversight responsibility and as government shareholder representative, I have assigned officials from the department to assist in dealing with financial problems affecting the SABC. And this is in recognition of the fact that at the office of the CFO, we still have problems with receiving documentation, with getting proper accounting for issues that we ask questions on between the board and myself. And we then decided, because even the board in itself lacks that skill, so we decided then to appoint people from the department that would be able to give that support to the board to ensure that all things finance related are taken care of. I have observed that the SABC has an extremely complex constitutional mandate. And to ease this complexity, which has to do with funding and line support from other ministries, I will engage other cabinet colleagues on industry growth and development matters in their various sectors. You will realize that with respect to the digital migration program, Minister Twele has to work with me, or I have to work with Minister Twele to ensure that is effected. But digital migration comes with its own unintended problems of funding, on content development, broadband issues. So it is not just a communications ministry issue, but it also affects many of my colleagues in cabinet. The other day I had a meeting with an organization that represents actors, musicians, and all of that. And they were complaining about the SABC's policy on the 90% local content. And the board at some point will come back and report on where we are with regards to whether or not that has affected the bottom line or not, and provide scientific evidence to prove their case on issues. And they were under the impression that that policy had been halted. And I am not aware that that policy has been halted, because I do not have that information before me. But what I did say to them was that ensuring the life and growth of people in that sector can never be the burden of the SABC alone. And from the party that I come from, there is no 90% policy. The party whose policies I am expected to implement, there is no 90% local content policy. There is a policy on local content, but not 90%. And I have no view whether 90% is right or wrong. And that is not the issue. But the issue is the burden of growing and developing and assisting people in the industry can never be the SABC's burden alone. The Department of Arts and Culture has a responsibility to assist. The Department of the Trade and Industry, because it is an industry on its own. The Department of Small Business and many other departments should come to the table so that the burden on the SABC is eased and carried by government in its totality. So on content development and marketing, the Department of Trade and Industry, Arts and Culture, Small Business will be approached by the DOC and other departments, of course. On channel expansion, we will engage the Department of Sports and Recreation, Higher Education, and other role players. On the management of systems and effective control measures, they'll be strengthened to ensure appropriate interventions are applied and introduced where transgressions and contravention of policy and other weaknesses are identified. And we pledge, Chairperson, and commit to comply with the recommendations of SCOPA, the ad hoc committee, on any policy that exists and legislation in an attempt to address the inadequate internal controls within the SABC and address historical legacy weaknesses in the SABC. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. No, thanks, Comrade Minister. Except that the other question about your employees was not spoken to. If it can be responded to, that's fine, but it was a question nonetheless.
I had spoken about the skills audit that was done, and I think the skills audit at that time did not take into account the digital migration.
I was being diplomatic. My question was, are you able to pay your employees at the end of the month?
Chairperson,
because we've been seeing all these stories in the media about this and that.
I think the board has to respond to that. But what I will say to you is that on the funding model of the SABC, we are in continuous discussion with the National Treasury, and on Thursday we have another meeting with the National Treasury on that. But I will leave that to the Deputy Chairperson to respond to.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Can you, in just 2 minutes, just talk to the issues I spoke to, and then we'll then take the matters up in the committee. Yes, yes.
Thanks, Chair. In the matter of the staff and payments, we are in difficult financial crisis. I think it's just important that everybody just internalizes that aspect. And in the formula of payments, we're using what people call the principle of a waterfall. And it depends on where you are in that waterfall, whether you're going to be paid or not. So on top of that waterfall, it's our staff. And we make a commitment here, we've made this commitment in the previous month, that no matter what happens, our staff will be paid. We are in continuous discussions with a whole lot of other service providers where we limp from one day to another, from one negotiation to another, in trying to ensure that content is supplied by people we haven't even paid. To that extent, this board took a decision that its own board payments will be suspended in total until such time that the financial situation of the SABC has been regularized. That's how seriously we're looking at this thing. So the short answer is they will be paid.
Okay.
Yeah. You then asked me about the absence of the chair and Mr. Aguma and his role with the DC. Today, there's a disciplinary hearing for one of our employees who called a press conference and said things about this institution that no employee, whether actively involved in the work or suspended, should say about this institution. We have instituted a disciplinary hearing against him for that.
Him who?
His name is Claudi Mutseneng, and that disciplinary hearing is taking place today. The chair is a witness in the case, and that is why she's not here today. As the minister said, Mr. Aguma has not been at work at the very least since Monday. And we have now been told that he will not be around until Monday next week. Meanwhile, yesterday, as part of this DC hearing, and I'm saying all this because you have asked me to address that, as part of this disciplinary hearing, we got correspondence from Mr. Mutseneng's attorneys, which included an affidavit deposed to by Mr. Aguma, in which he alleges that he gave Mr. Mutseneng the permission to hold the press conference, and also that there was no board decision to charge Mr. Mutseneng in this particular instance. That is not something that we were aware of, that an affidavit has even been deposed. So when you say to me, where is he? I sit here and wonder, as you do. Okay. Does that take care of your question?
No. He has deposed that affidavit and said what he has said, and yet, what are the facts?
This board, when it took the decision to institute the hearing, convened a meeting of the board where Mr. Aguma was present. And we discussed the issue about what to do with this matter and we resolved formally that we would appoint an external lawyer, and this is what is going to happen. And we went round the room to find out from each board member what their own personal feelings are about the decision that we were taking. The answers of every board member who was present are recorded, and Mr. Aguma's own responses at that board meeting are also in that resolution.
Right, thank you. So I'm trying to give context that when you say Aguma must come here, Aguma this, Aguma that, it might be that Akusena Muntu. All right, thanks very much, Comrade Minister. I'm not sure if the issues you want to raise that require the minister, or we should let her leave. You need her to hear what you... Okay, so just hold on a bit, Comrade Minister. We have not yet... We're just warming up to the actual hearing, mind you. This is not the actual hearing. Comrade Keka.
No, thanks, Chair. Let me also congratulate the minister. The minister indicated that there's somebody new or there's somebody acting that is in the position. But unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure whether that person is also part and parcel of the meeting here today, because I think it would have been correct to have that person that is in the meeting. The second issue...
Which person?
No, the acting...
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
The other issue that she raised is the issue of the filling of the vacancies, particularly at an executive level. My question is, does she have a plan? Because we went to the SABC, where what we discovered at the SABC was that everybody was acting. And she is correct by saying you need to fill in, that is, those positions. But my question is, do you have a plan? And if you do have a plan, would you then take us in confidence as to what are the timelines in terms of that plan? Thanks.
Without responding, couldn't that be responded to by the board? Or, I'm saying, don't you think that could be responded to by the board? The last question on the filling of vacancies.
No, it's fine if the board is going to deal with that.
Yeah.
Actually, I was taking advantage
Okay.
that she raised it in her speech.
All right. Okay. No, it's fine. I think the board should be able to respond to that because that's their responsibility. Comrade Shulwan.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and congratulations, Honorable Minister, on your deployment.